Hi, my name is Jana Garvin. I am a board certified chaplain with about 20 years of experience in healthcare chaplaincy. It is a wonderful blend of theology, healthcare, group dynamics, personality development, and a listening presence. I've also had experience as a counselor, and in my experiences professionally and personally, I've had the opportunity to meet with people of all ages from a variety of backgrounds and listen to their stories. And something that I have noticed that has felt important and meaningful to me is how our spirituality and the stories that we tell about ourselves are woven together. And in some ways, how we all have a personal myth or a personal legend that we live by. Thought I would take time to explore this intersection in a new podcast. And maybe podcasts are a little overdone, but for me, this is hopefully a passion project that lets me explore these ideas that are meaningful to me in a way that engages others, invites others to the table to share their stories, and offers an opportunity to reflect together on these meaningful conversations. I'm starting by sharing a little bit about myself and what my hope is, and at least part of where this experience is rooted for me, not only in my personal and professional background, but also in the learning that I've experienced, particularly around the hero's journey. And I'd like to spend some time today sharing about the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell, and ideally in podcast episodes to come, to look at the other three iterations of the hero and heroine's journeys that have been presented by others, and to kind of be curious beyond that point of what other kinds of narrative story arcs do we have, do we carry that might come from other cultures or traditions. So I'm going to take a moment and share a slide in the background so that if you're watching my presentation, you can follow along. There, it looks like the hero's journey is visible on the screen. Let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit more. Oops, too much. Oh, beautiful. So Joseph Campbell, um, and I always invite feedback as I am always a learner myself. But what I have learned about Joseph Campbell is that he studied comparative religions and mythology. And this was his interpretation of different religious stories or different myths that cultures have passed down through time in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Obviously, a lot of people have done a lot of study and insight and research into this. And while it's deeply meaningful for me, I mean, in all aspects, hopefully, am always open to learning new insights, new perspectives, and new ideas that people have about these things that have really been important and shaped me. The first thing I'd like to point out is that we're dealing with a circle. So every new beginning comes from some other beginnings in, to quote the song lyric. One adventure can really just lead into the other. The other thing I'd like to point out about the hero's journey, as Campbell has presented it to us, is that there is an ordinary world and an unknown world, and that the ordinary world takes up a much smaller piece of the pie, so to speak, and that in these adventures that we go on, much of our time is spent in the unknown world. There are 17 stages, and that's a little bit heavier than I think what is generally presented as the hero's journey. I think we often see simplified versions. I just want to do an overview here with the felt experiences as I have noticed it and how these stories unfold. We begin with the departure, right? The call to adventure. I heard another podcaster share a statement recently that Sometimes if we haven't felt a call to adventure, maybe we think we're not a main character. But there are calls throughout our lives of varying sizes, and our willingness to listen, in my own experience, begets more calls. We are attuned to our intuition. We learn the insights it has to offer, just like we might learn to play a musical instrument over time. Or, if you have a beloved person or pet in your life, you begin to sort of sense what they're asking for um, with greater ease and insight over time. And almost always, a call to something new, a call to an adventure feels really scary. Yeah, that idea that um, fear is excitement without the breath, but fear can catch us very quickly in a very real way. And we might spend some time refusing the call that's been put upon our lives. This is a really um, powerful idea that can be applied when we think about call to a new role, to a, a deeper level of living, whether that looks like sobriety, or committing to a practice or a relationship. Lots of reasons why answering the call might feel scary. We move into a period of supernatural aid. Coming from a religious background, when we talk about we as those professionally religious people, when we talk about our move into ministry as a profession, we often talk about hearing a call. And while that, of course, resonates with the refusal of the call itself, that kind of call right there, there's almost always a way in which we make meaning of our story that feels like divine intervention, or support in a way that we can't quite explain. And the synchronicities that start to line up. Dr. Lisa Miller, in her work on neurological development, has some really powerful things to say about synchronicities and the reality of them, that they do show up for us and we do notice them and they do matter. We then cross from the ordinary world into the unknown world, and here we have an almost immediate entry into the belly of the whale. This is imagery from, in my tradition, from the book of Jonah, when Jonah refuses his call, tries to run away, and ends up in the belly of the whale for 3 days. But in this case, it's like total immersion, right? We've burned the boat, so to speak, and we are at the end of our departure phase. We then come upon the initiation phase, which carries us through the bottom part of the journey on the screen. And maybe less so than when we look at the heroine's journey, we'll see a descent, like a more intentionally described descent. But as we go through the road of trials, it looks like a very short like blip on the screen here. And we move from the road of trials into this sort of dual encounter with the feminine, which is worth noting when we're walking through the hero's journey, that Campbell's work is pretty one-sided in terms of gender. And hopefully, as we continue to hear new stories and explore different forms of spirituality, we see that there is a wide array of experiences that are valuable and worthy of being included in ways that are specific to those persons who are carrying those stories. There's sort of two sides of the coin here, right? The feminine as the goddess and the feminine as the temptress. The atonement with the Father and this coming to know deep theological or spiritual truths as a result of that. And the ultimate boon, the ultimate level of success that one can achieve. So it's through those trials and the relational experiences that I think could be interwoven also as trials, that we come to new knowledge and new levels of success. And then we begin our return, right? We get on the roller coaster the roller coaster ends, we can get back in line, but we have to walk around back to the starting point. Of course, for any of us who've had what we might think of as mountaintop experiences, um, the the return to the valley, so to speak, can feel really uninteresting. But the return is part of the story. A wise friend pointed out to me that nothing really grows on the mountaintop. Lots of things grow in the valley. Valley is where there is nourishment and space for rest. The mountaintop has wonderful views, but really so does the valley. There is part here is where, let me check my notes. As we have this opportunity to go back to the ordinary world, right? As we're kind of cresting the top of the circle, we have the magic flight and the rescue from without before we actually cross back into the ordinary world. This is the idea that we can bring back some wisdom of what we've experienced, that we can return with some sort of hard-won wisdom or knowledge or experience that we can share with others that will mean something to them. I think that this too could be an interesting notion to sort of tease apart, and that sometimes we can only really come to that depth of knowledge and that sort of crystallized knowledge, that wisdom through our own experiences. Crossing back into the ordinary world, there's a tension, right? We're not the same person we were when we left. And the goal, as Campbell presents it to us, is to become the master of two worlds. The website heroinejourneys.com says it this way, that the hero understands and is able to balance the separation between the two worlds. And the hero also bridges the gap that seems to exist there. So that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to go back to the world as we knew it and be this new version of ourselves. I think we could continue to explore what that theme means as we continue to have these conversations, but to consider how that we're returning to the same world, but we're not the same person. And we, rather than becoming the master of two worlds, I think we have to maybe view ourselves differently. But let me get through the hero's journey before I start questioning Campbell too much. And then there's a sort of a release when we come to the final part of Campbell's journey, that we are free to live our lives. But that is until a new adventure begins. So, from the ordinary world to the unknown and back again, lots of wonderful images and insights to draw upon. The monomyth, as Joseph Campbell would have us know it. There's a quote from T.S. Eliot that I thought was fitting, considering we're talking about the return after an adventure. And Eliot writes, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." Uh, so perhaps in my mind, a gentler approach to that idea of being the master of two worlds, and inviting us to consider how we remain a student and retain our beginner's mind as we re-enter the ordinary world again. The reason the hero's journey matters is not just from myth and religion, but because I believe all of us carry a myth. And I think good storytelling is good medicine. We're very good storytellers, and we tend to believe ourselves about what we say out loud in our hearts and what we repeat over time. There is a quote that I heard from Sue Monk Kidd, but I believe it is attributed alternately to Leo Tolstoy or John Gardner, that says there are only two possible stories: a person goes on a journey or a stranger comes to town. And we can see that our hero's journey is someone going on an adventure, but there are lots of people along the way who are receiving a stranger in town. So there's always two sides to the coin. There's always two parts to every story. And it's not about telling a perfect story. It's not about never encountering the harsh or the difficult parts of ourselves, but it's learning to shape the story in ways that helps us heal and grow, that honors the bigness of our lives and continues to let us tell meaningful stories in meaningful ways on and on throughout the whole of our life's journey. So, this is my initial episode for spirituality and storytelling. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this introduction. I have a couple of episodes coming up with conversations with folks with their own stories and hope to continue to bring both meaningful conversations with others and reflections on these um, archetypal lessons we can bring into our experiences. So I hope that you're well. Take care and remember, you got this.